Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into something a little different this time.
Yeah, definitely a bit different.
You've sent us excerpts from a single source.
It's titled.
Yeah, it's called Kwaiset Yona,
That's right.
and we can't translate that directly, unfortunately, but it seems to be a collection of motivational speeches or like personal reflections.
Yeah, kind of like a combination of the two, I think.
So we can try to unpack the core message
Yeah, see what it's all about.
and see what actionable insights we can get out of it for you.
Yeah, it's full of like these bold statements and
Oh, yeah.
intriguing anecdotes
Definitely.
and this recurring idea of, defying expectations and forging your own path.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think we'll definitely get into that.
Yeah,
One of the first things that struck me was this idea of going deep versus going wide.
right.
The speaker argues that people mistakenly believe they need to broaden their horizons.
Mm-hmm.
But true success comes from focusing intensely.
In one area.
Yeah, on a specific area. It's about creating your own kingdom, as they put it.
That's such a powerful image.
So,
Creating your own kingdom.
Yeah.
It suggests not just like specialization, but also ownership
yeah.
and mastery.
Yeah.
Makes me think of like the Renaissance masters
Yeah.
who dedicated their lives to perfecting their craft.
Totally.
They didn't dabble, they dove deep.
They went deep, exactly. But this begs the question.
Okay.
How do you know what to go deep on?
Right.
There are so many options.
So many paths.
Yeah, potential paths to explore.
Hmm.
What advice would you give to someone struggling to identify their kingdom?
Ooh, that's the question, isn't it?
Right.
I think it starts with introspection.
Okay.
Understanding your values, passions, strengths,
Mm.
what truly excites you.
Yeah.
What problems are you uniquely equipped to solve?
Yeah, I like that.
And the speaker really emphasizes defying societal expectations.
Yeah.
So maybe it's about identifying those areas where your interests
Yeah.
diverge from the norm.
That's a great point. It's about finding that intersection between what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what the world needs.
Totally.
But the speaker also kind of delves into this tricky topic of comparison,
Oh, yeah.
using historical figures,
Oh,
Washington, Adams, Jefferson, to highlight this like double-edged nature.
the double-edged sword.
It is,
Yeah.
and they inject some humor into it too. They compare their pre-Instagram shitters to these monumental achievements of these historical figures.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny juxtaposition,
Yeah,
but it underscores a serious point.
it does.
How can we learn from the greats without letting those accomplishments
Right.
make us feel inadequate?
That's the question, right?
It is a struggle for many, especially in today's social media-driven world
Where everybody...
where everybody's showcasing their highlight reel.
Exactly.
Right.
It's all about the perfect curated image.
So how can we use comparison as fuel for growth without falling into the trap of feeling insufficient?
I think the speaker gives us a clue when they talk about the magnitude of like
Yeah.
personal battles.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that everyone faces challenges.
Yeah.
Even those,
Even the ones that seem,
the ones that like,
do they have it all figured out?
have it all together.
Yeah.
So we often compare our behind-the-scenes struggles to someone else's polished facade.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of focusing on these grand achievements, maybe it's more helpful to compare
Yeah.
our present selves to our past selves.
That's a great.
Like, are we making progress?
Yeah. Are we learning? Are we growing?
Are we moving forward?
Those are the comparisons that truly matter.
Absolutely.
That's a fantastic point. It's about shifting that focus from external validation to internal growth.
Totally.
And speaking of growth, the speaker seems to believe that courage is like the key ingredient.
Yes.
They argue that our potential for growth is directly proportional to the size of our aspirations.
It's like they're saying, dare to dream big. And you'll create the space to grow into those expectations.
I love that.
And they use the analogy of Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile, which was deemed impossible at the time,
Yeah.
but then quickly became achievable for others.
Yeah, once that barrier was broken.
Exactly. It was a perceived limitation that was shattered.
It's incredibly inspiring.
It is.
But how do we cultivate that level of courage?
Right.
Especially when fear and self-doubt inevitably creep in.
Well, that's where I think the speaker's call to action comes in.
Oh,
They
yeah.
say, do something to change it or shut up.
Wow.
It's a blunt statement,
It is.
but there's a powerful message behind it.
It's about taking ownership, isn't it?
Yes.
Not just complaining about circumstances,
Yeah.
but actively choosing to change them.
Exactly. And they go further. They say, what you are not changing, you are choosing.
Oh, wow.
It's a reminder that inaction is a choice.
Yeah.
We're constantly shaping our reality through the choices we make,
Mhm.
whether we realize it or not.
So the challenge for you, the listener, is to identify those areas
Yeah.
where you might be complaining about things you have the power to change.
Right.
Where are you settling for the status quo
Hmm.
when you could be actively creating the life you desire?
And this ties back to the idea of going deep.
Yes.
It takes courage to choose a path,
Right. Yeah.
to commit to it fully, and to resist that temptation to spread yourself thin. But the rewards of going deep,
Yeah.
of mastering your craft,
Yeah.
of creating your own kingdom,
Yes.
they're immeasurable.
Absolutely. And the speaker doesn't just leave us with these lofty ideals.
Right.
They also provide some very practical advice on how to make progress.
They do.
And one of the key things they emphasize is the power of consistency.
Yeah, they actually say that consistency is the most important advantage that we can cultivate.
Okay.
They talk about how even small improvements,
Yeah.
compounded over time, can lead to significant results.
Right.
They say improving by 1% isn't particularly notable, but if you can get 1% better each day for 1 year,
Okay.
you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done.
That's amazing.
It's powerful.
It's such a powerful concept.
Yeah.
But it's easy to get overwhelmed
Oh, yeah?
by the thought of making big changes.
It can be really daunting.
How can we break down this idea of consistency into manageable steps? How do we identify our 1% improvement areas?
I think it starts with identifying those areas where you're already putting in some effort.
Okay.
You know, where you have some level of interest
Yep.
and motivation. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Your fitness routine,
Mm-hmm.
your work habits,
Yeah.
your relationships,
Okay.
your creative pursuits.
Gotcha.
Then ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do today to improve by 1% in this area?
Okay.
It could be as simple as, adding 5 minutes to your workout,
Mm-hmm.
reading one more page of a book,
Okay.
or sending a thoughtful message to a friend.
Yeah. I love that. It's about focusing on those small, consistent actions that over time will compound
Yeah,
and create significant growth.
absolutely.
And it reminds me of another key theme that emerges from this source material,
Okay.
the importance of finding your own path.
Yes, finding your own way.
The speaker repeatedly encourages us to defy those societal expectations
Yeah.
and forge our own way,
Mhm.
even if it means going against the grain.
Right.
They use the phrase, "It can be right but wrong for you,"
I like
to
that.
illustrate this idea that what works for one person
Yeah.
may not work for another.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
It's not.
Yeah.
They share personal anecdotes about leaving the corporate world, moving away from home,
Right.
decisions that went against the grain of what they were supposed to do,
Yeah.
but ultimately led to greater fulfillment and meaning.
Right. It's about aligning with your values,
It is.
your own values and aspirations.
It takes courage to go against the grain,
It does.
to challenge those supposed rules that society often imposes on us.
And it can be scary
Yeah,
to step outside of that comfort zone.
it can.
Yeah.
But the speaker seems to argue that the rewards of authenticity, of living a life that truly aligns with your values and aspirations,
Yeah.
are far greater than the risks of conformity.
It's about being true to yourself.
It is.
Yeah.
So the question for you, the listener, is this.
Okay.
What's on your supposed to list?
Yeah.
What are you doing because you feel you should, even if it doesn't bring you joy or align with your true desires?
That's a really good question to reflect on.
It is. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of this source material.
Okay.
The speaker's unique perspective on adversity.
Interesting.
They have a very interesting take on hardship,
Okay.
seeing it not as a setback,
Oh.
but as a catalyst for growth,
Okay.
a necessary ingredient for shaping us into the best versions of ourselves.
I like.
They actually pose the question, what if those less than ideal things in our lives were ultimately the aspects of our lives that create the best of us?
Wow, that's a powerful reframing
It is.
of how we typically view challenges.
Instead of seeing them as obstacles to avoid,
Yeah.
they're presented as opportunities for growth
Right.
and
I
transformation.
like that.
And to illustrate this
That's
point,
right.
they share a compelling anecdote about Socrates,
Okay.
suggesting that his challenging circumstances, his poverty, and lack of conventional beauty might have actually contributed to his brilliance.
Wow, that's a fascinating thought.
It is.
Like, what if the things that we perceive as weaknesses or disadvantages are actually keys to unlocking our unique strengths and potential?
Makes you wonder how your own struggles,
Yeah.
the things you might be going through right now, are shaping you into a stronger, more capable person.
I love that perspective.
It's a powerful reminder that adversity, while often painful, can also be a source of tremendous growth and resilience.
Absolutely, and it was a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
Right.
Everyone faces challenges.
Everyone does.
Yeah, it's part of the human experience.
And this leads us to another important theme that the speaker explores.
Okay.
The power of learning from our mistakes and embracing failure.
Ah, yes, failure, the F word.
Right.
We all try to avoid it,
We do.
but it's inevitable.
It is.
It's gonna happen.
It is. They have a very insightful approach to this topic.
Okay.
They say, from our pain comes our purpose. From our despair comes our hope.
That's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
It's this idea that our setbacks, our failures, are not something to be ashamed of,
Right.
but rather valuable lessons that can guide us toward a more fulfilling future.
There are opportunities for growth.
They are.
Yeah.
They use this analogy of viewing past experiences as unfinished novels
Oh,
that can be rewritten and given new endings.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful way of thinking about how we can reframe our past
Yeah.
and use it to create a better future. But for many, the idea of embracing failure is easier said than done.
Oh, it definitely is.
How can we shift our perspective to see setbacks not as defeats, but as opportunities for growth?
It's a process.
It is.
I think it starts with recognizing that failure is an inevitable part of the human experience.
Yeah,
Everyone makes mistakes.
everyone does.
Everyone faces setbacks.
It's what we do with those experiences
Right.
that determines their impact.
Exactly.
So instead of dwelling on those negative emotions,
Yeah, the shame, the guilt, the self-doubt.
yeah, all of those,
Yeah,
we can choose to focus on the lessons learned.
right. What went wrong?
Yeah.
What could I have done differently?
Right.
How can I use this experience to make better choices moving forward?
That's a great point. It's about shifting the focus from self-blame to learning and growth.
Yes, and it's about remembering that our past does not define us.
Doesn't define us.
We always have the power to choose a new path,
Yeah,
to create a new ending to our story.
I like that. And this ties back to another key message that the speaker emphasizes,
Okay,
the power of perspective.
perspective.
They state that we don't see life as it is. We see life as we are.
Wow, I liked that.
Meaning our mindset, our beliefs, our attitudes, they color how we interpret the world around us.
It's like we're wearing these lenses
Yeah.
that shape our perception.
Exactly. And they offer contrasting examples of how people react to failure.
Right, some people.
Some see it as a reason to give up,
Yeah,
while others use it as fuel to come back stronger.
exactly.
And the difference, they argue, lies in their perspective.
Powerful.
It is. But changing our perspective,
Yeah.
especially when we're feeling discouraged or defeated, can be challenging.
It can be really tough.
So, what advice would you give to someone struggling to see the world through a more positive lens?
That's a great question.
And it's one that I think we'll delve into further in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
But for now, I think it's important to remember that our perspective is not fixed.
Okay.
It's something we can choose to cultivate and nurture.
Right. We have the power to shift our perspective.
We do. And sometimes, as the speaker points out, the best way to achieve what we want is to do the opposite of what we'd expect.
Oh, that's interesting.
They say, the best way to achieve freedom in your life is to be incredibly disciplined.
That sounds counterintuitive.
It does. But the idea is that by embracing discipline, by creating structure and routine, we actually create more space for freedom in the long run.
Okay, I can see that.
Think about it. If you're disciplined with your finances, you'll have more financial freedom.
Right.
If you're disciplined with your health, you'll have more freedom to do the things you enjoy.
Yeah.
Discipline, in a way, sets us free.
It gives us more options.
It does. But how do we reconcile this idea of discipline leading to freedom with the speaker's emphasis on defying expectations and forging your own path?
Yeah.
Isn't there a risk of becoming too rigid, too focused on rules and routines,
Right.
that we lose sight of the bigger picture?
That's a really insightful question.
It is something to think about.
It is, and I think it highlights the importance of finding that balance between structure and flexibility, between discipline and spontaneity.
Right.
It's about creating a framework that supports your goals and aspirations while also allowing for creativity,
Yes.
exploration, and adaptation.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another interesting point that the speaker makes.
Okay.
The importance of simplifying the process of starting new things.
Starting new things, yeah, that can be tough.
It can be. They say, stop creating friction for yourself when you're beginning new things.
Right.
They talk about how we often get bogged down in trying to create the perfect plan,
Yeah.
the perfect strategy,
The perfect whatever.
and that this can actually prevent us from taking action.
Yeah, we get paralyzed by perfectionism.
We do. But for many of us, the thought of starting something new, whether it's a personal project, a creative endeavor, or even just a new habit, it can feel daunting.
It can be overwhelming.
What advice would you give to someone who's feeling overwhelmed by the prospect of beginning?
That's a good question. And it's one that I think we'll dive into a little bit deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
I think we should.
We'll explore the speaker's advice on embracing imperfection,
Yeah.
taking action before feeling ready, and rewriting the first page of your life story at any moment.
Sounds fascinating.
It is juicy stuff.
I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah.
But before we move on, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've covered so far.
Yeah, let's recap.
We've explored the concepts of going deep versus going wide, the power and pitfalls of comparison,
Right.
the importance of courage and consistency,
Yes,
and the idea of finding your own path.
absolutely.
We've also touched on the speaker's unique perspective on adversity, their belief in the transformative power of failure, and their emphasis on the importance of simplifying the process of starting new things.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
But I think the key takeaway is that we have far more control over our lives and our destinies than we often realize.
We do. It's about making conscious choices, embracing challenges as opportunities for growth, and trusting ourselves to create the life we desire.
I love that. And I think the speaker's message is ultimately one of empowerment and hope.
It is.
It's about recognizing our own potential,
Yeah.
defying limitations, and taking bold steps towards creating a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, we encourage you, the listener, to reflect on these ideas.
Yeah, think that.
What resonated with you most?
Yeah.
What insights are you taking away? And how can you apply these concepts to your own life?
It's all about taking action.
It is. We'll be back soon to continue our exploration of this fascinating source material.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep exploring.
Keep learning.
Keep learning and keep growing.
Absolutely. So picking up where we left off, I think it's really interesting how the speaker ties discipline and freedom together.
Yeah, it is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Because we tend to think of freedom as the absence of constraints.
Right, exactly. But the speaker seems to think that true freedom comes not from avoiding responsibility, but from mastering it.
Yeah, like taking ownership.
Exactly. They argue that by imposing structure on ourselves, by establishing routines and sticking to them, we actually create more space for freedom.
Okay, I see what they're saying.
Like, think of a musician
Okay.
practicing scales.
Right.
It might seem tedious and restrictive,
Yeah.
but that discipline allows them to improvise freely and express themselves creatively when performing.
That's a great analogy. Is like by mastering the fundamentals, the seemingly mundane aspects of our lives, we free ourselves to operate at a higher level.
Totally.
But I'm curious, the speaker also emphasizes flexibility, right?
Right.
I mean, they wouldn't want us to become so rigid in our routines that we lose the ability to adapt and evolve, would they?
I think so. Remember their emphasis on finding your own path? That suggests a willingness to experiment, to adjust course when necessary, and to embrace the unexpected detours that life inevitably throws our way.
So it's about finding that balance
Exactly.
between structure and spontaneity.
That's it.
It's about finding a rhythm that works for us individually.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the speaker's advice on simplifying the process of starting new things.
Nice.
You know, they urge us to stop creating friction for ourselves when we're embarking on something new.
Yeah, it's like we psych ourselves out.
We do. We get so caught up in planning and strategizing.
Right, and it leads to procrastination.
Exactly. We create these mental barriers
Yeah.
that make the task seem much more daunting than it actually is.
Right, we overthink it, we overplan it.
And ultimately, we end up talking ourselves out of taking action.
Yeah, so what's the antidote to that?
Well, the speaker's solution is actually pretty simple.
Oh.
Start small and iterate.
Okay.
Instead of aiming for perfection from the outset, focus on taking that first step, however imperfect it may be.
I like that.
And then adjust course as you go, learn and adapt along the way.
So action precedes clarity.
Exactly. It reminds me of that quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step."
Yeah.
We often get so caught up in, planning the entire journey that we forget the importance of just taking that first step.
So true.
Yeah.
So the challenge for you, the listener, is to identify those areas where you might be overcomplicating things.
Yes.
What projects, goals, or dreams have you been putting off? Because you're waiting for the perfect plan or the perfect moment.
Yeah. Or the perfect circumstances.
What can you simplify today to make taking action easier?
Maybe it's breaking down a large project into smaller, more manageable tasks.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's setting aside just 15 minutes each day to work on a personal goal.
I like that.
The key is to reduce the friction to make starting so easy that you can't help but take action.
That's a great tip. And it ties back to the speaker's message of embracing imperfection.
Yes.
They argue that we don't need to have all the answers before we begin. We learn and grow through the process of through trial and error, through course correction.
It's all about embracing the journey.
It is. And they have this wonderful analogy of being able to rewrite the first page of your life story at any moment.
Oh, that's so powerful.
Isn't it?
It's a reminder that we're not defined by our past,
Right.
and we have the power to create a new beginning
Anytime.
at any time.
It's so liberating.
It is.
The idea that we're not stuck in this predetermined narrative. We have the power to choose our own adventure, to rewrite our story as we go.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to the speaker's emphasis on finding your own path.
Yes.
Remember, they repeatedly encourage us to defy societal expectations and forge our own way, even if it means going against the grain.
It can be right but wrong for you.
I love that phrase.
It's a good one.
It is. It really highlights the idea that what works for one person may not work for another.
We're all unique,
We are.
and our paths are going to be unique as well.
Exactly. And the speaker shares their personal story of leaving the corporate world and moving away from home.
Right.
Decisions that went against societal norms, but ultimately led to greater fulfillment and meaning.
It's inspiring. I imagine it also took a lot of courage to make those choices.
Absolutely. It takes courage to challenge those supposed to rules
Yeah.
that society often imposes on us, especially when those rules are, deeply ingrained in our families or our communities.
It's hard to break free from those expectations.
It can be really challenging. But the speaker seems to believe that the rewards of living authentically, of pursuing a path that truly resonates with your true self, are far greater than the risks of conforming to expectations that don't serve you.
So the question for you, the listener, is this. What's on your social list?
That's a good one to journal about.
What are you doing because you feel you should? Even if it doesn't align with your values, your passions, or your deepest desires.
It's a tough question to ask yourself,
It is.
but it's a necessary one.
I think so.
Because often the most fulfilling path is the one less traveled, the one that requires us to step outside of our comfort zones, challenge conventional wisdom, and create our own map.
I love that, create our own map.
Yeah.
And this brings us to one of the most thought-provoking aspects of this source material. The speaker's unique perspective on adversity.
Okay, let's talk about adversity.
They seem to view hardship not as a setback, but as a catalyst for growth, a necessary ingredient for shaping us into the best versions of ourselves.
I like where this is going.
They pose this incredible question. What if those less than ideal things in our lives were ultimately the aspects of our lives that create the best of us?
Wow, that's a real mind shift.
It is. It's a radical reframing
Yeah.
of how we typically view challenges. Instead of seeing them as obstacles to avoid, they're presented as opportunities for growth, learning, and transformation.
So it's not about avoiding challenges,
Yeah.
it's about leaning into them.
Exactly. And to illustrate this point, they share a compelling anecdote about Socrates, suggesting that his challenging circumstances, his poverty, his lack of conventional beauty, might have actually contributed to his brilliance.
Interesting. So his struggles actually helped him to see the world in a different way.
That's the idea.
Huh. It makes you wonder how your own struggles, the things you might be going through right now, are shaping you into a stronger, more capable person.
That's a powerful thought, isn't it?
It is. And it's important to remember that we're not alone in those struggles.
Yeah, we all face them.
We do. The speaker seems to believe that hardship is a universal experience, something we all face at some point in our lives.
Yeah, they encourage us to connect with others, to share our stories, to offer and receive support during difficult times.
It's about building community.
It is, because it's in those moments of vulnerability when we allow ourselves to be seen and supported by others that we truly realize our strength.
So true. And this leads to another important theme that the speaker explores,
Yeah.
the power of learning from our mistakes and embracing failure.
Oh, failure, our favorite topic.
Right. But the speaker has a really insightful approach to this.
They do.
They argue that our setbacks and failures are not something to be ashamed of, but rather valuable lessons that can guide us toward a more fulfilling future.
It's about reframing those experiences.
Exactly, and they use this beautiful analogy of viewing past experiences as unfinished novels that can be rewritten and given new endings.
I love that analogy.
It's so powerful. It's like we're not stuck with the original draft.
Right.
We have the power to revise, to edit, to create a new and improved version of our story.
It's so empowering. But I know from personal experience that it can be really difficult to let go of past mistakes and embrace failure as a learning opportunity.
Oh, it's definitely a practice.
It is. The speaker seems to suggest that we can shift our perspective on failure by asking ourselves some key questions.
Okay, what?
What went wrong?
Right.
What could I have done differently? And most importantly, how can I use this experience to make better choices in the future?
It's about shifting from self-blame to curiosity and learning.
Exactly. And recognizing that failure is not the opposite of success, but rather a stepping stone on the path toward it.
I like that. And this brings us back to the power of perspective, a recurring theme throughout this source material.
Yeah, the speaker keeps coming back to this idea.
They do. They repeatedly emphasize how our perception of reality shapes our experiences.
They say, we don't see life as it is, we see life as we are.
So our mindset, our beliefs, our attitudes, they're like filters.
Yes.
That color how we interpret the world around us.
And they offer those contrasting examples of how people react to failure.
Right.
Some people allow it to define them, while others use it as fuel to come back stronger. And the difference, they argue, lies in their perspective.
It's amazing how much power our perspective has over our reality.
It's true. It's a reminder that we have a choice in how we perceive and respond to the events in our lives.
We always have a choice.
We can choose to see challenges as opportunities for growth or as insurmountable obstacles. We can choose to focus on the negative or to seek out the positive.
And sometimes the most empowering choice we can make is to do the opposite of what we'd expect.
Like embracing discipline to achieve freedom.
Exactly. Remember the speaker's paradox. The best way to achieve freedom in your life is to be incredibly disciplined.
By embracing discipline, we create structure and routine, which actually frees up mental energy.
It's counterintuitive, but it's true.
It's like clearing the clutter in our minds so we can focus on what truly matters.
And this mastery, this self-discipline, it's not about deprivation or restriction.
Right.
It's about creating a framework that supports your goals and aspirations, allowing you to move through life with more ease and intention.
So maybe it's not about forcing ourselves to do things we hate,
No.
but about creating a structure that feels aligned with our values and our goals.
Exactly. It's about finding a rhythm that works for you individually.
It's about choosing to show up for ourselves and for our dreams, even when it's challenging. Consistently.
Day after day.
And trusting that those small, consistent actions will compound over time and lead to incredible results.
And that's what the speaker is really encouraging us to do.
To embrace the journey,
Yes.
to find our own path,
To cultivate courage and resilience.
and to never stop learning and growing.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And that leads to another interesting point that the speaker makes.
Okay, what's that?
They talk about the importance of simplifying the process of starting new things.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. They said, stop creating friction for yourself when you're beginning new things.
It's so easy to get bogged down in the planning and the preparation.
Right, like we want everything to be perfect before we even start.
Exactly, and that can really hold us back.
So what's the solution?
Well, the speaker's advice is pretty simple. Start small and iterate.
Okay.
Instead of trying to create the perfect plan, just take that first step and then adjust course as you go.
Action before clarity.
Exactly.
But for many of us, the thought of starting something new, whether it's a personal project, a new business, a creative endeavor, even just a new habit, can feel really overwhelming.
It can be daunting.
It can. So what advice would you give to someone who's feeling stuck in that planning phase, hesitant to take that first step?
Well, I think it goes back to simplifying the process, right? Reducing that friction.
Yeah.
Instead of getting bogged down in all the planning and strategizing, what if we just focus on taking that first small step? Embracing the idea of imperfection and allowing ourselves to learn and adapt as we go.
Yeah, totally. It's about shifting our mindset. not needing to have everything figured out before we begin, but embracing the unknown and trusting the process.
Remember, you win by going and then evolving.
Exactly. And that ties in perfectly with the speaker's emphasis on finding your own path.
Oh, absolutely. This idea of defying societal expectations and forging your own way, even if it means going against the grain.
Right. They say it can be right but wrong for you.
Right.
What works for one person may not work for another.
It's about finding what truly resonates with you.
Exactly, regardless of what others might think or expect.
The speaker shares those stories about leaving the corporate world, moving away from home, decisions that went against the norm but ultimately led to greater fulfillment. It's inspiring. But I imagine it took a lot of courage to actually make those choices.
To step outside that comfort zone and really pursue your own path.
Definitely. And it's not always easy to defy those expectations, especially when they come from people we love and respect.
It can be really tough.
But the speaker seems to believe that living authentically, pursuing a path that aligns with your true self, those rewards are far greater than the risks of conforming.
So the question for you, the listener, is this. What's on your supposed to list? What are you doing because you feel you should, even if it doesn't bring you joy or align with your values?
What are those things that don't light you up inside?
It's a tough question to ask.
It is, but it's an important one.
Because oftentimes the most fulfilling path is the one less traveled.
It's the path that requires us to step outside our comfort zones, to challenge conventional wisdom and create our own map.
Create our own map. I love that. And it brings us back to this idea of the transformative power of adversity.
Right. The speaker sees hardship not as a setback, but as a catalyst for growth.
A necessary ingredient for becoming the best versions of ourselves.
What if those less than ideal things in our lives were actually the things that create the best of us?
It's a pretty radical reframing.
It is. Instead of seeing challenges as obstacles to avoid, we can see them as opportunities.
For growth, for learning,
Yeah.
for transformation.
It reminds me of, you know, that Japanese art of kintsugi?
Oh, yeah?
Where broken pottery is repaired with gold?
Highlighting those cracks and imperfections.
Exactly. Instead of trying to hide them.
It's beautiful.
It is. And those broken pieces become part of the object's history, adding to its beauty and value.
Maybe our struggles are like those golden cracks.
Making us stronger and more resilient.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So the things that we might perceive as weaknesses or disadvantages, maybe they're actually the keys to unlocking our unique strengths and potential.
Makes you think about how your own struggles, the things you might be going through right now, how those are shaping you.
It is a powerful reminder that adversity, while often painful, it can also be a source of tremendous growth and resilience.
And we're not alone in those struggles.
No, we're not. The speaker reminds us that hardship is a universal experience.
Yeah, everyone faces challenges and setbacks.
They encourage us to connect with others, to share our stories, to offer support, to receive support during those difficult times.
Because it's in those moments of vulnerability, when we allow ourselves to be seen and supported, that we realize our true strength.
And that brings us to this theme of learning from our mistakes and embracing failure.
Ah, yes, failure.
The speaker has such an insightful approach to this,
They do. They argue that our setbacks and failures are not something to be ashamed of.
but rather valuable lessons.
Right. Lessons that can guide us towards a more fulfilling future.
They use the analogy of viewing those past experiences as unfinished novels that can be rewritten and given new endings.
It's like we're not stuck with the first draft. We have the power to revise, to create a new and improved version of our story.
Such a powerful image. But I know it can be really difficult to let go of those past mistakes
Oh, for sure.
and to really embrace failure as a learning opportunity.
It takes practice.
The speaker encourages us to ask ourselves, what went wrong? What could I have done differently? And how can I use this experience to make better choices in the future?
So it's about shifting from self-blame to curiosity,
To learning,
recognizing that failure is not the opposite of success,
but a stepping stone.
on the path towards it.
And that brings us back to the power of perspective, this recurring theme throughout the source material.
It all comes back to perspective.
The speaker emphasizes how much our perception shapes our experiences.
They say we don't see life as it is. We see life as we are.
Our mindset, our beliefs, our attitudes, they're all filters that color how we interpret the world.
And it's reflected in how people react to those failures. Some let it define them. Others use it as fuel to come back stronger.
And the difference, the speaker argues, is their perspective.
So we have a choice.
We do. We can choose how we perceive and respond to events in our lives,
We can choose to see challenges as opportunities for growth.
or as insurmountable obstacles.
We can choose to focus on the negative or seek out the positive.
And sometimes the most empowering choice is to do the opposite of what we might expect.
Like embracing discipline to achieve freedom.
That paradox. The best way to achieve freedom in your life is to be incredibly disciplined.
By embracing discipline, we create structure and routine. And that frees up mental energy.
It allows us to operate at a higher level.
Right, it's like we're clearing the clutter from our minds so we can focus on what truly matters.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this material,
It's been quite a journey.
it has. I think it's important to emphasize that the speaker's message is ultimately one of hope and possibility.
Absolutely.
We all have the potential to achieve extraordinary things, to create lives that are meaningful and fulfilling and impactful.
And the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Embrace the process.
Yeah.
The ups and the downs, the challenges, the triumphs, and trust the path, however winding it may be, will lead you exactly where you need to be.
And remember those inspiring words from the speaker. Sometimes the best thing you can remind yourself is how big the world is, how much you can shape and bend your reality, how powerful you are.
Embrace your power, believe in your potential, and never stop exploring, learning, and growing. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.